Okay. Good. I hope you do.
You hear us okay now?
Hello. So nice to see you.
Oh, great. I don't think thank you. Thank you.
Oh,
Thank you.
Yes.
yeah.
Hey, how are you? Henry.
And you guys will sit over here when it's time. Sit with Ryan and Robin's gonna sit over there.
I know, right? Not after last time.
Great. Okay.
Yeah. We did a great job getting sandwiches for everybody. And then the emails started coming in. I can't be there in person. I can't be there. So, yes, please have a sandwich.
Bob. All right. How's you guys? How's the season started for you guys?
We had one cancellation and we've only played twice.
Okay. I haven't. I don't know. I'm just trying to keep track of my daughter's schedule, and it's like I haven't looked at boy stuff too much yet.
Pretty hectic. We're heading to Eugene this afternoon.
It was funny.
Basketball, we played Thursday. Today.
I think it was Friday. Maybe it was Friday or Saturday. My daughter was supposed to. They were playing one of the. I think it was one of the Eugene schools was supposed to come. Or no, it was Wilsonville.
Oh.
Wilsonville or Woodburn was supposed to come over here. Of course, they canceled when the storm was hitting.
Yeah,
But I asked her, I was like, the boys were supposed to be on the road. They played over in Sherwood. She's like, oh yeah, they had to go. You know, it's that whole thing of, it's like nobody from there comes over, but
Yeah,
it's like,
well, the boys playing at Sandy on Friday, and the girls, Sandy girls, they had to come here. Yeah, canceled the day before.
yeah.
The girls would come here and on the cycle. Our bus driver driving the snow, it'll be over.
Where are you headed this afternoon?
Yeah, we're.
Okay. But I mean, at least you're on that side. It's not so far.
It's actually the last road trip here.
Get playing
Florida holiday trip here and then everybody.
Yeah.
Oh, really? And far. Holy, traveling far. Wow.
Is the holiday term in here, is it scaled back a little bit this year?
It's no girls this year, just boys.
Okay, because my daughter, and it was over in Corvallis.
Yeah, I think 8 teams for the boys.
Okay.
What happened to the girls?
They just kind of the girls went there and they want to the valley or somewhere else.
Yeah.
Last year there was so many cancellations.
Oh, yeah.
How would people coming? I was hard to get enough teams to come in and then at the run. And go and leave everything on a word. So I think people were just like, well,
Right.
We'll go somewhere else. Yeah.
I think we have got folks to be able to start our meeting. Chris, I see hands appearing and not and disappearing up there.
What's that?
Like a wireless?
Yeah. Well, it's a speaker, so.
Oh.
Cameron, can you hear us?
I can, and I'd like to request we start the recording before we start the talking.
That's the deal.
Thank you.
Thank you, Kobe. Can you start with it? Excellent. Thank you.
You have to-
Thank you, everybody.
I'll-
And welcome to this meeting of the Bend Metropolitan Planning Organization. I really appreciate you all making time in your schedules. Chris, thank you for being here. For Phil. It's a cold, snowy day, but we have really important, exciting things on our agenda today. So thank you for being here. Let's just start in the room here and we'll go around and introduce ourselves. Bob, would you want to start, please?
Bob Townsend, ODOT area manager.
And I'm going.
Robin Lewis, Transportation Engineering and Transportation Mobility Department.
Tyler Diekey, Bend MPO staff.
You could introduce yourself if you want to.
John Nealon, I'm chair of COBAC, City of Bend Accessibility Advisory Committee.
Brian Potwin, executive director of Community Options.
Henry Stroud, I'm a planner with Bend Park and Recreation District.
And Hobie Anderson, MPO staff.
Excellent. Kobe, would you go through everyone who's online for us, please? Thanks.
We have Ray Hamlin, MPO staff.
And I can read
You.
Toby, I couldn't hear you at all. Just
Yeah,
FYI.
same.
Uh-oh.
Hobie, it's showing you being muted.
All right. There.
She's here.
All right. Thank you. That will take us, Kobe will also help everyone with our hybrid meeting guidelines.
Yes, for the meeting guidelines, just remember to mute yourself online and speak your name in person here, since we are all in one camera, to keep everybody on track. And raise your hand, the meeting is recorded. Thank you.
Great, thank you, Kobe. That brings us to agenda item number 3, which is public comment. Is there anyone who would like to speak public comment today? I don't see any, so thank you. After that, we're on to agenda item number 4, which is the approval of meeting minutes. I would look for a motion to approve the meeting minutes from November 15th, 2022.
Move to approve the minutes.
Place another Java Speak 710 nearby and press its link button to link them together.
Second.
Thank you. We have a motion from Member Perkins and a second from Mr. Doty. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Raising your hand. Any opposed? Yep, so that's unanimous. Thank you, everyone. That brings us to the reason we all came out in the snow today. Agenda item number 5. This is the Surface Transportation Block Grant competitive application process. We've had projects submitted and we are going to determine funding for those projects today. And it looks like Andrea Napoli, our MPO staff, will take us through this item.
Yep, thank you. You can go ahead and go to the next slide. There you go. So today the policy board is being asked to make a determination on awarding Surface Transportation Block Grant or STBG funds. to projects seeking funding during this application cycle. So to begin with, we'll kind of back up and review our STBG competitive project application process for this application cycle. Then we'll move to the applicant presentations of projects. And after that, we will review the criteria-based ranking of those project applications. And finally, we'll go over the funds requested for each project and the funding recommendation that was put together by the MPO Technical Advisory Committee that has occurred over their past 2 meetings. Next slide. So here's our timeline for our 2022 STBG project solicitation. So this past spring and summer, if you remember, the board approved a portion of the MPO's annual STBG allocations to a competitive application process, where you see that arrow there. And also an equity-related criterion was added to the project application. In early September, we informed eligible entities of this upcoming funding opportunity, and we received 7 project applications by the October 21st submittal deadline, which were then posted to the MPO webpage. So presentations for all 7 projects were given to the TAC at their November 2nd meeting. And then TAC members were asked to provide a completed scoring sheet for projects based on our established application criteria. That information, along with the results of staff scoring, were then used to rank the projects. And at the December TAC meeting, the TAC further evaluated projects to look at other important considerations that aren't necessarily included in the criteria. And at that time, the TAC put together a recommendation for the policy board of projects they felt should be awarded funding, which I'll bring up later in this presentation and was also included in your agenda packet. Next slide. Or any questions on the timeline there? Okay, you can go to the next slide. So this slide shows all applications that were submitted with short descriptions of the work to be funded. Shows project locations either with an arrow or by color. So I'll go through each one of these. So we have the Deschutes River Trail at Archie Briggs, grade separation feasibility study for planning and preliminary design. Next in blue is the downtown signal upgrades and bike and pedestrian improvements. So this is looking at upgrading 4 traffic signals downtown and designing a separated bikeway on Hawthorne and Oregon Avenues. Next is the Gilchrist Bridge replacement. So seeking funding there for developing design plans for this bike and pedestrian bridge that connects Riverfront Street to Columbia Park. Next is the travel options and safe routes to school program. So this isn't, this is citywide, it isn't necessarily mappable. But this is for development and implementation of a safe routes to school program. And then over to the right there in green is the low stress network implementation. So this is to complete what's called phase 4 of the neighborhood greenways project, design and construction of bike and pedestrian improvements and traffic calming devices. Next in red is the Colorado Avenue corridor planning study. So planning work to identify concepts for multimodal improvements along this corridor. And finally in purple is stress reduction for bike lanes on 2nd, 3rd, 9th, and 15th Street. So here is to install new bike lanes where they're missing on 3rd Street, and then installing buffered bike lanes on 2nd, 9th, and 15th Street. Next slide. So this table lists the amounts requested by federal fiscal year for each project. And in the bottom rows, you'll see the total amounts requested, the total available, and then in the very bottom row, any amounts that are remaining. So I'll note that during our last call for projects in 2020, we had more than double in requests than funding available. So we don't have that situation this time around. Any amounts that are unused in this application process will go into our MPO reserve, where they could be used later at the discretion of the board. Next slide. So next we have our project presentation. So we have Henry Stroud from BPRD and Robin Lewis from the city of Bend here to talk about their project submittals. And please feel free to go ahead and ask any questions as they go through their slides for each project.
Andrew, can I ask a quick question on the
Oh
last?
yeah, of course.
I'm sorry. How did, on the slide before with the money?
Yeah.
How did we determine how much was available for each of these? Does that make sense? Like not like the funds requested and how much is available. Can you kind of go over that again?
Yeah, so actually, Tyler or Hobie, whoever's running it, do you want to go back to the, okay, so that table shows
okay.
where in I believe it was in the May or June policy board meeting.
Yep.
That those dollar amounts were going to go to this application process.
Okay, that makes more sense. Thank you.
Yeah. So the next slides are Henry's, and then Robin, will you be sharing your slides? I can. Okay, cool.
Yeah.
So, passing off to you, Henry.
Okay, yeah, well, good afternoon, everybody, and members of the commission. Thanks for having us here today to present on our grant applications. My name is Henry Stroud. I am a trail and transportation planner with the Bend Park and Recreation District. And I'm here today to talk about the Gilchrist Bridge replacement design project. The Gilchrist Bridge is also known as the Columbia Park Bridge. And I'm going to show a map in a minute, but this is essentially located in between Riverfront Street and Columbia Park. You go to the next slide, Andre. So the goal of this project is, we're saying 30%. We think it's probably going to be closer to 60, but we're trying to underpromise and over-deliver here. The goal is to complete 30% designs to replace the bridge entirely. We looked at potentially doing some refurbishing to the bridge, and after conversations with the city, we're aiming to actually replace the structure itself. Our request for STBG funds is for $100,000, and this is for engineering and design, and this money would be spent in the current or in fiscal year 2023. So replacing this aging structure with a modern bridge will, our goal is really to improve trail user safety, increase accessibility, and enhance the usability of the City of Bend's low stress network. And Andrea, will you advance a couple times, maybe twice? Keep going, one more. Oh, go back. Yeah. Oh, thanks. Oh, Tyler's doing it. Okay. So this map shows the current location of the bridge in between Columbia Park. The bridge itself is a wooden structure. We know that it was constructed at least before 1994. I don't know of the exact date. But the long and short is that the bridge does not meet modern design standards for a multi-use trail. And then we're also starting to see some structural deterioration, which I'll go into in a bit more detail. The park itself is owned and operated by the Bend Park and Recreation District. The bridge is currently owned by the city, but we've been in conversations that if we replace this bridge, that the park district would take over ownership and maintenance responsibilities for that bridge. And then, so just a couple other things we have going on. We are currently in the design phase for a bank stabilization project. We have a river access point located immediately adjacent to the bridge that started to fail. And what we want to do is try to incorporate the designs of this bridge into that stabilization project because of their immediate location. And then also, we just pointed out, we have some current STBG funding where we have teamed up with the City of Bend. The City of Bend is managing the project, and the Park District is supplying about $750,000 in funding. And then we have several $100,000 in STBG funds. to do design and construction, to redesign and reconstruct Riverfront Street to make it more accommodating to trail users. Yeah. So I'm just going to run through some pictures really quickly. Here is the existing bridge. This is standing at the river, the Failing River access point, looking towards Riverfront Street. Go to the next slide. And then here we're looking the other direction, and the river stabilization area is just to the right of the bridge. So really, when we started to get into our bank stabilization design efforts, we realized it's going to impact the bridge somehow, and this is really kind of the opportune time to think about replacing the structure as part of a holistic project. One of the other large reasons we want to replace the bridge is for accessibility. So there's kind of two things at play here. The bridge itself is only 7 feet wide, and it's a wooden structure with a very uneven wooden deck. Most modern trail bridges are 10 and even greater, often with bridges between 12 to 14 foot wide, with a smooth surface that's more accommodating to all types of bicycle mobility devices, etc. We also have a situation where the grades, this is the eastern approach to the bridge, where we have grades that are exceeding accessible guidelines. And we've heard from the community this is a major barrier for wheelchairs and mobility devices.
Henry, would you mind if I said,
Sure.
Our accessibility committee, the city's accessibility committee, brought up the approaches to this bridge, and our streets department was able to make improvements just on that asphalt on both sides.
Yeah, this picture is a little dated. I think they put in some flexi pave or something in there. It's still at the smart level that we have on there, and so our grades are still pretty bad, and we're hoping that by replacing the bridge we could ameliorate a lot of that. But yeah,
do you mind if
fine.
No,
keep going.
The other thing they brought up is that board across the top of the handrail is a blocked view of the river for anyone using a wheelchair or a hand cycle. And I think that board is trying to keep kids from jumping off of there. And so our committee has just been concerned about the design of the handrail, but it's been my understanding you all are using a standard handrail design. And go ahead.
So a new bridge would have different railings. I'm not sure of the exact height. I hadn't heard that before, but that's really interesting about blocking people sitting in wheelchairs. Yeah. Any new bridge would most likely have jump deterrents on the railing, similar to our other bridges, where it's essentially like several courses of cable that go across that are integrated into the design. But yeah, no, that's really good feedback, and we'll definitely keep that in mind. Sure.
Thank you.
Yeah. Next slide. And then finally, just some of the deteriorating conditions. So here you can see the bridge abutment and these mortared rock wing walls that are around the abutment. We're seeing a couple things structurally here. We're seeing undercutting of the abutment itself, so under the surface of water, and then we're seeing some failure of the wing walls, and the structural backfill that's behind the abutment has started to cavitate. There's about a 3-foot opening there that's going in behind the abutment. So we don't think the bridge is in any imminent danger of failing, but its conditions are deteriorating. In the city, I believe, is also going to be doing a structural analysis of this structure to kind of help inform any future design for a new bridge, or see if we can reuse these abutments moving forward. And then finally, just the fee proposals. I won't go through this line by line, but essentially we're asking for $100,000. We have a quote, so we do have an existing design consultant on board, and we would add this to their contract. They quoted us $80,000. We added $10,000 in contingency, which brings our project's cost to $90,000. And we're asking for $100,000 with the idea that 10% of that would be lost by doing the fund exchange program. And then so the grant would be funding 100% of the project.
Are there any questions for Henry? I have one more myself.
Okay.
The bridge in Drake Park also needs to be replaced. And I'm just curious, hoping that the design of both of those will go hand in hand and we're not duplicating efforts. I imagine they might end up being similar. in design.
You know, that's a really good point. I know, so again, the bridge in Drake Park, it's one of those weird situations where it connects two parks, but it's owned by the city.
Right.
And we had teamed up with the city to apply for some funding a couple years ago when we didn't get awarded for design.
We're trying to put it in our
Yeah.
budget. Okay. For the next,
Yeah.
5 years.
Okay,
As far as just design,
Yeah.
funding most likely will still have to be a grant process.
sure.
But Barb, it sounds like what you're saying is design consistency between the two bridges would be important to think about now.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And, you know, and that seems to be how we might save money on both of them if we were to just
Make them more
choose.
modular.
Mhm.
Just choose the
Yeah.
handrail design and have
Yeah.
it be the same for both. Same type of decking, maybe
Mhm.
those kinds of decisions might just be consistent.
Yeah.
And then save some money when it comes time to deciding on the Drake Park. It's just gonna be.
Yeah.
Yep.
That's really
Very
good feedback.
Thanks. Of course, yes, sorry, Joe. Please, yes, we have actual, the chair of our accessibility committee, please, yes.
I'm wondering if the bridge sign is gonna be similar to the other new bridges that have been put in, like at Farewell Bend.
You
Or
know,
like a metal structure with a wood deck.
I would assume that tends to be the most cost efficient. We just did one at 15th Street and Chloe over the canal. They tend to be concrete decks with prefab, essentially Corten steel structure. Yeah.
I can speak on behalf of that committee and say, we will invite you to come to the city's accessibility committee.
All right.
As design starts to take shape, and you've come to speak before, and we're always happy to have you, Henry.
Yeah, and I would love to do that. And the project manager for this is Ian Isaacson. He's one of our landscape designers. He's also kind of like our accessibility specialist. So he would probably be a really good person to come talk to you guys.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. Any other questions? All right. I think that means we'll move on to the next project. Andrea, is that right?
Yes, we have Robin.
Robin's gonna
will
share her
walk-
screen.
Excellent. Thank you.
And everyone can hear me?
Yeah, speak a little louder though.
Okay.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. My name's Robin Lewis. I am a transportation engineer for the city, working on these grant applications. So we did apply for all years 22 through 27, and I'll go through each one of them today for you. The overarching goals were really trying to extend service and provide that value added to existing projects. Our pinch point within the city is personnel and having project managers. We're working on our general obligation bond. It's a very aggressive CIP. And we're working on marrying projects up. So you can see on the right, there's synergy projects listed. So each one has a little bit of synergy going on. Colorado's project is really synergy with land use that's going on in the area. There's box factory, timber yards, otherwise known as core pine, is coming in south of Arizona, and they are going to they're working on their master plan and some site plans coming in. They affect intersections in the area with the Parkway and ODOT. But this project is really needed to create that intersection form analysis. What does particularly on the east side of the overpass, what does the ramp look like? Right now it's a single stop sign for trips to and from the north. There's a few crashes right there, not very many though. They were all angle crashes at that intersection. We did have our city attorney hit on a bike there a few years back. The other side has a traffic signal. It's not very bike ped friendly on that. Let's see, to and from, oh, that was to and from the north, yeah, it was to and from the south.
I'm sorry, which intersection?
Yeah.
Colorado and?
Colorado and the Parkway that has a
Oh.
traffic signal added.
Right.
So there's not that many crashes there. It has an existing signal, a couple of rear ends on the ramp, and then one angle crash. You can't see it, it's yellow, so it was a injury B there. Most interestingly, the intersection at Sizemore, as we turn the corner, it's a local residential street. It had 28 crashes at it. So we had very few at the ramps where there's a little bit more traffic, but then we had a whole bunch right here. So part of the question we want to answer is what's going on these corridors and how can we prevent crashes? It'll help us do that intersection form analysis for the Parkway ramps, allow us to coordinate with both ODOT and ODOT Rail, as well as Burlington Northern, and look at the GoBond project, which we have at Ani and Second Scott there. So it allows us to kind of look holistically and use the traffic studies that Corpine has done and then marry them with some other things that are going on. And hopefully we walk away with a concept that's approved by ODOT and Rail, and we all know what we're moving forward for full design and construction. It ties a lot of low stress network aspects together. Right in the middle of some of ODOT's equity mapping, the darker colors are the more intense, historically underserved communities. This area in the lighter pink, right around the Colorado project, this lighter pink was an area with 200% below the federal poverty level and more zero-car households than the community average.
What is 200% below federal poverty? So the federal poverty level is an income.
It's
They're
income.
twice below it. So instead of 20,000 to 10,000.
Yeah.
Got it.
Well, no, it's,
Family of four.
And it's
yeah, well, family
Family
for it's
plan.
about $26,000 and we looked at it doubling that to 54,000.
Oh, okay.
It's double, means you have a bigger, you're capturing a bigger chunk of the population because even if you're making 54,000 or you're effectively the big.
It's generally what's considered low income as opposed to living below the poverty level.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. So are there any questions on the Colorado planning study?
I don't see any hands. Don't think so. Thank you.
The next project is the Deschutes River Trail at Archie Briggs. And there's an existing crosswalk there today. It is right here in this very tight horizontal curve right here. You kind of see the trail go through there. The crosswalk characteristics today, it's an S curve. The 85th percentile speed up here was 38.7 miles per hour. So they're coming in very fast. Volumes are lowish, less than that 3,000 ADT. Trail users about 225 per day. And the trail does continue north of here about 2 miles with a goal in long range plans at the Parks District to extend that to Riley Ranch at an approved bridge location. The county has approved that bridge location. And then there is that trail that goes all the way to Tumalo State Park. So this project is looking at assessing the possibility and potential to grade separate, try and get a preliminary design and a cost estimate. We estimate that the project costs are $100,000, and we would run this in synergy with the city's Go Bond project for at-grade interim improvements at the crosswalk to try and increase user awareness of the crossing. Because of those curves, it's tough to see.
Would you go back on that one, please, Robin? And can you just tell me what all those colors mean for crash data?
Yeah, so the blues are property damage only, and the green is a minor injury, level C.
Thank you.
The crashes on the corridor are really concentrated right at the curves. People coming a little too fast, crossing that center line.
Well,
Yeah.
no, it's narrow, then the road.
Yeah, there's no bike lanes on that road. So there isn't a lot of opportunities.
Are there sidewalks?
No, there's
I
nothing.
didn't think so.
Yeah. So people are walking and biking in the street. This one had a lot of questions from the tax, so I tried to pull a little bit more data from our transportation system plan and look at its role as transportation. So these are two heat maps. The one on the left is housing growth and where the city is projected to grow. The one on the right is jobs growth. And you can see this trail crossing highlighted in the red circle, kind of in between, and would be useful to help us have an alternative route between areas of high growth in the city. Allows us to connect that Riley Ranch, Tumalo State Park, downtown and midtown, which are both growing rapidly.
And when you say that, do you mean on the trail? Okay.
Just trying to get that all users facility.
Yeah.
Trails are our highest service, right? So it's away from cars, it's more comfortable. So it enables us to serve that all ages and all abilities. So having a crosswalk at this location, which has really tight geometry and tough operations, we're trying to see if we can create a long range vision that it would be grade separated.
Great, thank you.
Any questions?
Questions? David, have you got a question?
Yeah, I had my hand up. I was just going to chime in the comment or asking about whether there was bike lanes or sidewalks in that area on Archie Briggs Road. And as Robin mentioned, there's not. Just wanted to mention that with the local bridge program, we're currently in work order contract negotiations, or I should say ODOT is, with the consultant for design. But what we've got in that scope for the Archie Briggs Bridge replacement project would put in a structure there to collector standards with bike lanes and sidewalks for the bridge crossing. We also included on one side of the street a sidewalk connection that would go from the Deschutes River Trail location that Robin is explaining here, down and towards the east across the bridge and over to Caddisfly Way to connect into some other pedestrian facilities. So there's that other project trying to improve the bike and ped in that area as well.
Yeah, that's great. That's a great project.
Thank you, David. All right, I think that means we can move to the next one.
So this next project is a quick build to enhance bike lanes associated with the Wilson corridor. So we're constructing protected bike lanes on Wilson Avenue between 2nd and 15th. And as we're trying to connect that really great facility up to other routes and increase the usability for more all ages and all abilities, we're trying to add buffered bike lanes. 2nd, 3rd, 9th, and 15th. So we would be able to remove the existing striping and do a speed assessment with ODOT and create the lower stress bike lanes. So we'd be able to get LTS 2 on everything and LTS 3 on 3rd Street. So each one kind of steps down one stress level, which opens up how many people can use it. The cost estimate for this one, interesting. So when you remove lines, there's mobilization and traffic control, but there's also that environmental protection and a little bit of design, just to make sure that we're out there and able to have the road. So we put in a small contingency, just because striping these days, with all things construction are going up. And so the grant request is for 79,000, almost 80,000.
So it's remove the existing paint
Mhm.
and replace it with,
New paint in a different, slightly different location.
Okay.
To just widen the road, or just widen the bike lanes enough to get that buffered bike lane striping in.
and the buffered means that double striping.
Mhm.
Thank you.
Yes. Here's the map of the equity, the 9th Street project and 15th Street project. Pretty much solidly in, again, what's that, 200%, and transportation disadvantage population index. This is the area down here, that's that same thing on for 2nd and 3rd. We're trying to make these connections again to connect downtown Bend, Old Bend, up to Wilson Avenue in a lower stress route. So it's definitely quick build. And we're excited about that.
Always.
Yeah. Any questions?
Questions on this one? Don't see any hands.
Awesome. Okay, this next one is Neighborhood Greenways Phase 4. There's an existing CIP project that has been working. Don't remember the year we started, 2019, looks like. And everything in the dashed gold is phase 4. And you can see there's actually a little piece of phase 3 that's not quite funded yet. So, but that's the 2nd Street that was on the previous slide. So what this funding would allow us to do, move through design, but concepts, preliminary design and construction. It would be run by the CIP project manager for the Neighborhood Greenways project. So we would add money to that project. Details wise, it allows us to connect with the ODOT, the new RRFB at Greenwood Avenue and 6th Street, connects that down to the pool, and it combines with the city's got a project for 1 north-south, 1 east-west wayfinding. So that would come up here on 15th Street, Wilson Avenue, and then come up 9th here. Asking for 664,000 on that one.
Any questions on this one?
Robin, what are some of the improvements that would be built as part of the Greenway? Because I know there's kind of a whole menu of.
There is a whole menu.
I'd come to that 660. Yeah.
Yeah, so some of them are neighborhood greenways, just the low stress network, that's a per mile
Mhm.
basis. So some of these streets like Irving Avenue, we would be able to do that. Some of these streets down here would come off the Drake Park footbridge and come down on Kansas and Broadway. That would be neighborhood greenway. So it's just a distance per mile. I use 300,000 we've been seeing about on that. And then shared use path, cost of the shared use path up here on 6th Street, because there's this, it's a very small little segment between the RRFB at 6th and Greenwood and the pool. But it doesn't have sidewalk or bike facility. So I use the cost of that for that one.
Got it. Thanks.
That's a great question. Interesting, there is some transportation disadvantaged population right in this core area of Bend, and this project really hits that quite well. I put on this map, these are bus stops. Little icon is a bus, kind of hard to see. But there's some bus stops on Franklin, there's one on Hawthorne, and then the two right on either side of the 6th Street crossing. I'm trying to better connect our users with a network that's more comfortable and meets their needs. Transportation options, the next project. Trying to get a safety and education program at the city with reliable funding. We are lucky that we have commute options within our community, and they've been successful getting ODOT grants for safe routes to school, education and encouragement program. Recently, ODOT revamped their programming, and we were locally able to get an innovative grant, but not the standard meat and potatoes education grant. And so there's a hole within our community for being able to reach out within the school and have that. So what this grant would fund is comprehensive education program, promote safe behavior by all roadway users. So it does reach beyond the safe routes aspect to get into the community. Increase comfort and knowledge of transportation facilities in Bend. We're trying new things. One good example is 9th and Wilson has a protected roundabout. It's very different, and just trying to get more education out about that. Do some rides, get people to ride it. I was out witnessing the high school kids. They're riding it clockwise instead of counterclockwise. And so they're riding it in a way that works best for them to get from point A to point B, but doesn't match the flow. So getting that education and hands-on experience out there into the community, create those opportunities to use the existing low stress routes and connections. 2 years ago and this year, we did pilot projects with Commute Options and the Environmental Center of taking kids out on Wednesdays after school. We've got this big chunk of time with them. They get out of school early, release, and then taking them out on rides and getting them that experience on where's the trail connections in our town, what are the easiest routes to allow them to experience it and have that confidence that they know where the routes are and how to use certain facilities like an RRFB and things like that. We would prioritize reaching out and working with the K through 12 schools. And as far as impacts, education is really impactful. We've been looking into what is the effectiveness, and there's been some research recently. This was this figure on this one, volume 80. I think it was a 2019 study. Up to they studied 4 different school safe routes to school programs across the U.S. And what they found was up to 45% more students walking and biking to school, daily habits created. And when you get them hooked young, they kind of like take their whole family with them, right? Up to 30%, 36% fewer motor vehicle trips because there were more carpools and more kids on the bus as well. And up to 44% fewer injuries. That was from a study in New York City where they were looking at school-aged kids within the commute times, the 7 to 9 a.m. and the 3:30 to 4:30 in the afternoon. But they found with safe routes to school education, 44% fewer injuries for those school-aged pedestrians. And then as the city moves into this Vision Zero, Clackamas County is really doing some great stuff with education within their community. So they're pairing engineering and evaluation with education and enforcement, and they're seeing really good results, reducing those fatal and serious injury crashes. So that's the kind of program we want to create. One of the questions I had for the policy board is if on Andrea's first slide, the 62,811, and then there's like $6,000 left over in your budget. If you could consider and have a discussion on adding that to this project, I think that would make a lot of sense. I was trying to reach to that 70,000 mark when we were doing the budget for this. So that would be really helpful if you could think about that.
Not 70,000 per year, right?
Just trying to get us closer to that. So any questions on that project?
We've got one question from Chris.
Yeah, I got a question. Thanks. Just about the budget, and you're showing a 10.27% match. Is that a, you can
Federal.
maybe scroll back to
Yeah.
that slide. So these are STBG funds,
Mhm.
but they don't have like a match component, do they? I guess
Well,
what's
yeah, no, that's great. Originally, when we applied, this was in a federal year. And so these funds were assumed to be federalized. ODOT and MPO have since had a couple conversations, and this would no longer be a federal project. So it would have a 10% local exchange.
okay?
cost. So similar, not 10.27, but 10. So those numbers would remain.
And I can clarify that a little bit. So originally when this announcement, the call for projects came out with ODOT, it was our understanding that for the first 3 years of funding, we could use fund exchange, and for the outer years for 2025 through 2027, the projects would have to use federal STBG dollars. That required a 10.27 local match on those federal dollars. However, we've recently been informed as of like a week or two ago that we will have some amount of dollars that we can fund exchange for those out years. So we can, instead of this project having to use federal dollars, they can use fund exchange, which would then be, I believe it's about a 10% exchange fee.
Mhm.
Yeah, I'm not, yeah, okay. I see. My understanding is there's $250,000 in ODOT's current scope or current proposal that would be unencumbered or would be state funds. I think the likely scenario if ODOT had their way is that they would all be federal funds by the time you get to 2025, because they're not showing a sustainable fund exchange program beyond just the next few years.
Yeah, so that's the amount that we were told that we could use up to fund exchange for 2025 through 2027.
Okay.
250,000.
So the other part of my understanding is, even if they were federal, I don't think there's an exchange. I don't think there's a match. I just think that you're required to deliver them federally, which means some of the funds that you're getting, you then have to spend on either consultant to deliver it, or hire ODOT back, or of course you guys I think are talking about becoming certified, which just means you go through the federal process and the funds probably don't stretch as far. But I don't think there's a match requirement for that.
No, for us and then the other Oregon MPOs I've worked for, it is a 10.27 required local match for federal
STBG.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Yeah. All right. Well, we'll see.
It'll be a development in how it goes, but the
Yeah.
funding, I think, for the project would be in the bulk, be able to be awarded.
Yeah. So, budget wise, I did allocate 50,000 towards ODOT administration, assuming they would deliver the project. If it stays federalized, we're hoping it can be local. And then city could deliver it.
Any other questions on that one? Right. Your hand is still up, Chris. Thanks.
So this next project is signal and technology project, and then combined with a bike and ped project on Hawthorne Avenue. So the signal technology aspects is 4 traffic signals downtown Bend that are old, outdated, and obsolete. This would allow design for those signals, upgraded traffic signal controllers, equipment, those new poles. The poles are really, they're ancient out there. Detection, the conduit has failed, so design-wise, this would require understanding what's going on with those utilities under their power connection, communications in the interconnect, EDA compliance, and then that integration with the separated bike facility emergency crossings on the Hawthorne, Oregon signals. This would, for the bikeway, it would be that design and towards construction funding. The bikeway would get us that connection between the Deschutes River Trail and the Coiner Trail over an assumed new Midtown Crossings project. So we're piecing together funding towards that. We've applied for some federal funding on that. But this would enable us to leverage that project, which is already federalized. And be able to get us signal upgrades downtown. Here's a location map. You can see the 4 signals are right at the edge of this higher area. Again, the 200% transportation disadvantage population index. We're really trying to improve the signal ability to handle traffic and pedestrians. You know, those signals go dark at night. They move to flash, and that's because of detection issues, but they're also dark in terms of illumination. So there's a need to upgrade and update the illumination at those 4 signals, trying to reduce emissions and have improved detection and upgraded controllers. There are other controllers out there. Any questions?
Doesn't look like it.
Okay. Well, thank you guys. Appreciate your time. It's a little tedious with 5 projects, but hopefully
Not at all.
that was fine.
And this would be last. Any questions on any of those we've heard about? Okay,
Thank you.
thank you. So Andrea, now I guess it comes to us.
Well, I have a couple more, just a couple more slides.
Great, thank you.
Okay, so you can move from that one. So as I mentioned earlier, we have a criteria-based scoring for each project application. So the applicant is responsible for explaining how well their project supports each criterion listed in this table. We have higher scoring criteria, which is shown in the darker green, which applies to safety, accommodating multiple users, increasing system efficiency, accommodating those that do not drive, also reduction of vehicle miles traveled and or emissions, and advancing equity in transportation. And then we have lower scoring criteria in the lighter green, and that includes cost sharing, supporting economic development, and freight. The criteria scoring and resultant ranking of projects that's on the next slide is really, it's just meant to be, oh, you can go back, Tyler. Sorry. Is really just meant to be a tool to help the TAC develop a funding recommendation and to help inform the policy board's decision on funding. So there's other important considerations that should be taken into account that aren't covered in our set of criteria. So things like overall need and importance of the project, timing and readiness, and if other funding sources could potentially be used. So with that, you can go ahead and go to the next slide now, Tyler. So here's the results of the scoring and the ranking. On the left, you'll see the combined results of the individual TAC member scoring, how that shook out. And then to the right of that, you'll see the ranking results of the staff scoring. And some highlights here, the project that consistently scored highest, both with TAC members and staff, was the low stress network implementation. I think in the presentation, Robin, you called that the neighborhood greenways.
Quick build bike. Oh yeah, neighborhood greenways, correct.
Right. And then the project that consistently scored lower with, in comparison to the criteria with TAC members and staff was the Deschutes River Trail at Archie Briggs, the grade separation feasibility study. And then we had some real variations in TAC member scoring, and that would be the Gilchrist Bridge replacement and the transportation options safe routes to school program. Just keep in mind, sometimes doing these assessments can be somewhat subjective. So I think that's where that's reflected. So next I will pull up the TAC funding recommendation. I'm going to share my screen, which essentially is that all projects be fully funded. And there's some additional information on there. So let me share my screen here. Are you able to see that?
Yes, we can.
So this is the original, these are all the original amounts requested, and the TAC had recommended to fully fund all projects as requested. I do have some notes here on the side, again, noting that, when it comes to the criteria, the lowest ranking project and the highest ranking one, and then the results of the final votes of the TAC, if they supported putting it into the funding recommendation or not. So I will use this spreadsheet and whatever edits the policy board would like to make to it as the record of the funding award. So go ahead and open it up to any discussion of supportive projects, editing any amounts, or not funding any projects, or any changes.
I would like, just for myself, I always like to make sure I understand the bookends and what are we doing and what are our options.
Yes.
So the fact that we might have money left over tells me that we could have all the money left over. If we didn't like any of these projects, we could just say no, and any or all of the money could go into reserves, and then at a later date, we would figure out what to do with that money. And then the fact that City of Bend has requested the leftover money tells me we can adjust the amounts in any way we would like if we think somebody ought to get more or less. So those are all options for us. And the only reason I personally think that those options are different this year is because of that fund exchange. This year, the only applications we got were from the City of Bend and Bend Parks and Rec. And, we do believe that's because smaller organizations, frankly, just don't even know how they could spend the money without the fund exchange. So in past years, we absolutely have gotten requests from, for example, commute options that we were able to fill. So, the only reason I bring this up is, yeah, we could decide we wanted some in reserves, hoping that sometime soon, these smaller organizations might be able to apply, might have figured their way around the fund exchange program. So I'm not advocating for that. I'm just, again, make sure we all understand what the process is, what we could do with the money if we chose. Or obviously, we could take the recommendation of the TAC and fully fund all the projects this year, which would be amazing and kind of exciting and wonderful that all of the projects actually get all of the money they're requesting. So with that on the table, is anyone else got just any comments or thoughts in general or about any projects in particular?
No, I just,
Only-
oh, go ahead.
No, go ahead.
Chris.
Sorry.
I was
Okay.
just, go ahead, Chris.
I'm muting. You're higher ranked than me.
Oh, yeah. Barb, based on just like what you just said about, maybe we have this reserve fund and we hope that, that this fund exchange, situation, becomes something that more outside groups that aren't government, agencies can utilize. How much of a hope do we have for something like that? Not fully understanding sort of the issue. Can anyone?
That's a great question.
Chris can probably speak back to that.
So my understanding is right now ODOT is floating a proposal to ask AOC and LOC to amend the STBG fund exchange agreement to provide $265,000 annually in state funding. And then anything that organization gets over that would have to be federal. With one exception, this is kind of why I raised my hand. They will exchange any bridge funds. So for example, that Gilchrist Bridge, ODOT says they can do fund exchange for bridge projects. That's not a part of the $265,000 that they intend to provide to all local governments. So now, of course, we're pushing back on that and floating a legislative proposal to codify fund exchange and amend some areas to allow that to happen. But right now, as it sits, I think it's probably $265,000 a year for the next several years, and then possibly it could go away after that outright.
Thanks,
And
Chris.
then, but Chris, to clarify, that for us is for the 2025, 2026, and 2027 funds. We have the MPO and the city of Bend has existing fund exchange agreements through September of 2024. So we can use fund exchange for the projects that you see for those years, 2022, 23, and 24. And then we have the 250 in fund exchange that we could potentially use for the out years for us, because we have existing fund exchange agreements.
Thank you. Robin?
So I'm wondering if the project row 6 downtown signals could be split into federal and non-federal.
Yeah.
So if there's a little bit of, if the transportation options is all non-federal, and then whatever's left, if we could heal and phase or something like that, the downtown signal upgrades aspect into a non-federalized.
The policy board decision doesn't have a federal or non-federal component to it at this point.
Okay.
So awarding these funds, the MPO staff would be able to help through that process and make.
Yeah, I would agree with Toby. We could sort out those details.
Okay.
But I think, given that those are the outer years, like Chris said, there's several proposals that are starting to move.
Okay.
Maybe this legislative session, and then make it punted, with subsequent legislative sessions that address this fund exchange issue and ODOT operational funding deficit that they're expecting to hit by 2025. So there's going to be some movement. So I mean, we may be coming back anyway and doing some kind of modifications to this in a couple of years anyway.
Make sure Melanie.
Just maybe to share what the county's doing with its STBG allocation that it gets from ODOT. You're as an entity, you're allowed to save up to either 3 or 4 years worth of STBG funds and not allocate or spend them.
Okay.
And so what we do is, or what we have been doing lately, I should say, is of course we're partnering with ODOT on all sorts of projects in Tumalo and Terrebonne, all over the place. And ODOT's delivering projects and the county's adding cash to it. Since ODOT's projects are federalized to begin with, we're not accepting that STBG funds, even with the fund exchange rate 90% into our budget. We're letting ODOT hang on to that, and then we're giving it back to them as match funds on the various projects and agreements that we have. So we're getting today 100% of our STGB value without any fund exchange, kind of through that line of thinking. You know, I think what you want to do here is, as a city of Bend, think about something along those lines as well. The last thing you want is probably 5 different partially federalized projects. We probably should think about things in more of that strategic standpoint of, say, you know, you guys are partnering with ODOT on lots of these projects, writing big checks. And you can take STBG funds and allocate, you know, on that side of the house, and then bring other funds perhaps into a program, you know, internally within the city to fund things like this. You know, maybe even outside of the MPO process.
Yeah.
So there's, you know, we're talking about STBG because that's how we've kind of structured it all along. But strategically, as a one city MPO, you know, there may be a better way to get everything you want here, but a lot more efficiently, dealing with this holistically.
Thank you. Thanks,
Yeah.
Chris. Thank you, Megan. That's an excellent question. For myself, it doesn't seem like trying to reserve money for organizations that may or may not apply when we don't even know when they may or may not apply is not necessary. And again, we have good projects in front of us. They have been recommended by our own advisory committee, but maybe, and this, these are our STBG funds. This happens every year, every 2 years.
We have a 4-year cycle, just like this.
Well, thank you. But my point is, this money comes in regularly. It's not like our COVID fund money, for example, where it's just a one-time thing and what should we do with this money? But we will be going through this over again and again. So maybe it's just something for future MPO boards to be mindful of, that we had, you know, this year where it was only the city of Bend and only Parks and Rec that got any funding. And maybe future boards might be mindful of that and be looking to smaller organizations for funding. But that's kind of neither here nor there for today. Melanie, thank you so much for joining us. I see your hand is up.
Hi, yeah. So can you all hear me?
We can.
Okay, great. My little square didn't light up. So I think it's really interesting what Chris said about leveraging the STBG by letting ODOT keep it and then using different money that we would normally spend on ODOT projects. I don't know that we have the same amount of ODOT projects that the county does necessarily. And I know I was just thinking about like the North Corridor, that funding was allocated years ago as part of making sure we got a federal match. You know, I don't know how much we have room to play around with. You hold some STBG and count it towards this or that. But I think it's worth exploring that idea. And then also just want to remind everyone that the city is looking to get certified to accept federal funds directly, and that will happen in the next year or two. And that will also make it easier for city-led projects to accept federal funds. But I agree with you, Barb. I heard you float kind of the idea of the reserve, but I think these are important projects that we should allocate now. And as Tyler said, there is no certainty on what's going to happen with the legislature. Things can happen at the last minute. You know, bills can come out of nowhere. And I think there's going to be a lot of movement around the fund exchange because it's a topic that cities and counties care about. So I don't think we can count on anything there. And so I think we should allocate, and then we can always come back, as Tyler said, with this longer timeline we have in front of us and adjust.
And one thing that I do want to mention is, aside from these dollars that have been dedicated to this process, the board did approve $80,000 of STBG every year to go into a reserve for those outer years, 2025, 26, and 27. And we do have, in addition to that, I think, Hobie, you can correct me, we have an existing reserve of approximately $250,000. So we do have a fair amount of STBG dollars currently in reserve and expected to go into reserve outside of the dollars for this process. Tyler, I saw you wanted to say something as well.
Yeah, I was just going to say, having a reserve, I think right now is especially critical, just given the continued cost increases that we're seeing for everything, and they're varying somewhat, but, some parts to the construction projects, they're seeing, 20 and 30% cost increases.
Yeah.
And so having a reserve will be critical, I think, to make sure that we can actually fully fund these projects once they actually do move towards implementation.
Thank you. Any other thoughts or questions?
Barb, hi, this is David, and I just want to chime in. Chris, I appreciate the comments, kind of that holistic approach. I think to Councillor Keebler, Mayor to be Keebler, Melanie's comments of, I think our opportunities are maybe a little bit more limited compared to, countywide, but we definitely want to continue to watch these moving parts and discussions, particularly around the fund exchange, and be creative or think holistically. The other thing we have going for us too is the GEO bond has a fair amount of money basically set aside to leverage and help with those ODOT projects. So appreciate the comments. We'll want to continue to look holistically, but today that's where we're at.
And how about the idea of taking the remaining funds and adding those to the Safe Routes to School program? Is anyone interested in doing that?
I sure am.
Okay. I see Melanie's nodding her head. Chris, what do you think?
I support, whatever, the city would like to see here in the way of ranking. These are all, function of the City of Bend project. Even the Gilchrist Bridge, I would put that number one if I was a city, because you're getting rid of a bridge. If you can shine it up enough for Parks and Rec to take it over.
Thanks, Henry.
Yeah.
We've got a couple of those.
Boy,
All right, Dave, I'm writing down all the favors you owe me. so.
right? If we put a great big bow on it, and we just give it away.
Yeah.
Okay. Oh, and I guess the last thing I'll say, again, just on the scope of the project that we got this time is, and again, this is just a little reminder to ourselves that, although we are a single city MPO, our boundary did expand a few years ago to include Pumelo, to include Deschutes River Woods, and just a little land in the county around the city. So, that's another probably just for us in the future, be mindful, maybe reaching out to see if there are projects or concerns from those parts of our MPO. Obviously, this round of projects is, they're all in the City of Bend. So again, that's the thought, just something for us to always be thinking about. I think I am looking for a motion at this point. And if someone would like, I would imagine the motion would include, if they would like, the additional funds going to the Safe Routes to School.
So as, just to clarify, so as Robin had proposed, that would be instead of the 62,811 per year, that would be a straight 70,000 per year for those years. Is that correct, Robin?
I didn't do the math, so it'd be 62,811 plus 7189.
Yeah, I believe, yeah, I'm pretty sure that's a 70,000.
Okay.
So if anyone would like to make a motion.
We do have a slide with the motion link.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, good. That's helpful.
So
Here, let me stop sharing.
spreadsheet, would you want to change those to 70,000, Andrea, first, and show that as presented?
I can't hear you, Hobie. Could you say that again?
Did it go to sleep again? Go ahead, Tyler. Can you ask that question? I don't know why it can't hear me.
She's wondering if you could adjust the spreadsheet.
Yeah, so I can, I was gonna put in that new amount, if you would like me to do that.
Yeah.
That is the case, then the suggested motions would still
Mhm.
work for us today.
Okay. So I move to approve funding as presented currently in the spreadsheet policy board underscore STBG underscore awards underscore December 2022.
Second.
Excellent. We have a motion from Ms. Perkins and a second from Mayor-elect Keebler. All those in favor, please indicate that you are in favor. Aye.
Yes.
And that looks unanimous to me. Are there any opposed? Nope. We have a unanimous vote. Nice job, everyone. I think we can be excited about these projects. These are all worthy, important things, especially with safety as our prime consideration. Has anyone got any other business they would like to bring up?
Could I just comment that I so appreciated the addition of the equity considerations in the decision making, but also in all of the presentations.
Yes, here. Great.
Yeah.
So I think it's kind of the end of the year, and for other business, maybe our brains are not on next year yet, except for Tyler.
I've got one thing for you, and we have, we discussed last month, we've had an application open for local resident members of the budget committee and the technical advisory committee. We received a few more applications since our last meeting. We're looking for one or two board members to help review those and then bring a recommendation back to the full board hopefully next month. So if there's someone who would like to volunteer, that would be great.
I would be happy to do that. You're looking at me. Would anyone else like to look at applications with me? It's like it might be you and me, Tyler.
I'm happy to help you out, Barb.
Okay, thank you, Megan. We'll send you the doodle poll and see if we can all three get together on it. Great. That brings us to another opportunity for public comments. Looking at John on this
Cameron
one.
has a question or hand up. Go ahead, Cameron.
Go ahead, Cameron.
Yes, prior to our meeting today, I received an email from Andrea regarding a second motion
Oh,
that staff wanted the policy board to consider.
Yeah, so Tyler, I think the updates to the slide deck didn't get, or either that it was a previous version. I updated the slide deck to add a motion, if the board would consider staff having the authority to make up to 5% dollar adjustments for approved projects, in case so that those requests wouldn't have to go, those small dollar amounts adjustments wouldn't have to go to the board in the future. So something that the board could consider.
Cameron?
Yes,
Oh, I'm sorry, your hand's still up.
sorry. Too many things to look at.
Andrea, do you want to share that slide on your screen really quick? Just
Let me,
have it.
I have to pull up the,
Give me a minute. I can pull up the email, but I don't have the slide in front of me,
hold on.
just so we can see it, and then I can consider that, since we have 5 minutes.
Yeah, I can pull it up, hold on.
Well,
David?
Thanks, Barb. I just wanted to take the opportunity, shout out to Chris Doty and your crews and Bob Townsend and the ODOT crews with this winter storm we had this past weekend.
And your own, David.
Well, all of us, everybody hit it hard. And when you're basically one of the only school districts on the east side of the Cascades to be open on Monday, kind of says
Wow.
something for the team effort in the area. So. nice to have.
Wow. I was able to get back over the Sandy Ann Pass on Sunday, thanks to ODOT's work. Yes, and then when I got back to the city, I could get to my house. Yeah.
Team effort in the region. So.
Absolutely.
wanted to say,
Thank you.
good job.
Thanks for that. All right, Andrea, have you got a slide for us to consider?
Yeah, hold on just a second.
Thank you.
No. Sorry, my dog is freaking out. Bad timing. Let's see here. Share my screen. Okay, so there you'll see the second motion.
Got it. Granting staff authority to increase funding by to 5%. Anybody, any question or discussion about that second motion?
What's like the largest project that we fund? Like,
I
what's the
think-
largest amount of money this could be?
85, I think was the largest.
385,000.
That's fine.
Okay.
The largest, wasn't it?
Okay, not multi-million dollar. I'm just like what this applies to, that's all.
Right, no, that's great.
5% of small is different than 5% of big, but
Absolutely. No, that's a great question. So we're talking hundreds of thousands. We're not talking million.
and this is for STBG projects.
Yeah, this would be for this round of approved projects, and the total amount, 5%, I don't believe is more, I think it's 100, just slightly over $100,000 total.
Makes sense. Okay.
Okay. So if anyone is interested, I'd entertain that motion.
I move to approve granting staff the authority to increase funding by up to 5% of the awarded amount for the approved STBG projects.
I second that.
Thank you. We have a motion from Councilor Keebler and a second from Councilor Perkins. All those in favor, please raise your hands, say aye.
Aye.
That's unanimous. Thank you so much, everyone. Anything else? Staff members? That's
Climate friendly meeting on January 4th, which will be sending an information for them out to, right?
What?
The January 4th meeting
Oh, for carbon.
Carbon.
The carbon funding.
funding, that's what it was.
we have more money to spend.
Yes.
Yeah. So anyone who might have time to join us on January 4th, we'd be policy board members.
Yeah, I mean, it's gonna be, we're gonna inviting mostly members of the advisory committee, and then if we have one or, I mean,
I'll be there.
you have mentioned you want to be there, so you've been invited. If we have any other board members who want to engage in that discussion as well, what we want to do is hopefully come up with a local strategy on how we're going to apply for those new carbon reduction funds that are available from the federal government for the MPO area.
Great. Cameron, I see your hand is up.
Yes, I asked my question in the middle of your asking for public comment at this end of the meeting, and I wanted to make sure we allowed the public to make any comments.
Thank you.
Thank you, Cameron. And we don't have any.
I don't see anyone's hands up.
All right. I think that means that the next meeting of the policy board scheduled for January 17th at noon, right here in the Deschutes Services Center in the Lion Room. And I just, again, thank you everyone for accommodating being here today for this really important meeting that we had to reschedule for a different time. All of you that were able to Zoom in, and Chris, we always appreciate when you can fill in if Phil's not able to make it. I hope everyone have happy and fun winter holidays. Enjoy the snow, be safe. All right, we're adjourned.
Good, thank you, everybody.
Thanks, everybody.
Thanks, everyone.